Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. You guys know what time it is. Time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And for those of you who like these type of videos, please remember to click like down below. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. And sorry guys, I can barely talk because of this big smile on my face. You guys see that big smile? Because yeah, I love this one. I love this topic. Love this topic. Because Jeff Cavalier, aka Athlean-X, has officially put the above the knee rack pull into the exercise graveyard and has said no person should ever do this exercise. Now, I am sometimes critical of Jeff as a strength coach, but I'm never critical of him as a physical therapist. And that's something that people need to remember, that because that really is his wheelhouse. But in this case, Jeff is the king of the mountain right now on YouTube Fitness, and he basically has just taken my side in an argument that I've had with numerous other YouTubers. And this is one of those two where it's caused me beef, it's caused me fights, it's caused their fans to get angry at me and everything else. And some of these people actually have come and defended themselves on my comments, such as Scott Herman, because we have numerous fitness YouTubers who have actively promoted this exercise. Alpha Destiny started it. Eric Bugenhagen pulled his support of it, right? He eventually said, look guys, don't be doing this, right? So he revised his stance, because again, smart guy, hard training guy, good background in coaching, he knows what he's doing. Jeff Nippert has promoted it, which again tells me a lot about what we need to know about Jeff. And then also that shredded sports science guy who seems to really adore Athlean-X, and I don't know why, when he's into someone like Athlean-X, who does promote physical therapy, why he went against me and decided I was wrong and Alpha Destiny was right about the above the knee rack. Well, he came and defended it viciously, insulted me over it, and yet here it is. Jeff is saying this is in the graveyard. So I'm hoping the shredded sports science guy, you guys go link this on his wall. Link to him what I said. Maybe he'll be man enough to apologize for being on the wrong side of the argument and say, you know what? Jason was right. Even Jeff is agreeing here. I'm going to revise my stance. Hopefully he'll be man enough to do that. That would be greatly appreciated. So, over to the point. Jeff has basically put this in the exercise graveyard. Now, I've gone so far as to say that this is probably the worst exercise I have seen demonstrated on YouTube in recent years. And I've said that before. It's probably the worst exercise being promoted. If I were to put it into a bad category, it's like right there with squatting on a Bosu ball. It's in that category. Because what we have is a show-off lift that is there for no reason other than to show off. It doesn't carry over to anything. It has a very high injury risk, and it damages equipment. It destroys equipment in gyms. Like, people who are doing this are ruining equipment. And as Jeff pointed out, he goes, look, when you look at the injury risk perspective, this is an exercise that has an enormous risk of injury, of causing permanent damage in your shoulder structure, stuff that could ruin you for the rest of your life. Sorry guys, part and parcel of living in a big city is always going to be some background noise. I waited to film after 5 a.m. So, as he's pointed out, your risk of permanent injury is actually fairly high on this, and the training response is negligible. Right, there's very, very little in terms of training response to this. And even a lot of these guys are like, but doesn't it work the traps hard? Not really. It doesn't even work the traps as hard as a conventional deadlift in certain ways. And that's something I've talked about repeatedly in the past. It's not that great of a trap exercise. Right? It's not that great of a trap exercise. In fact, if you guys do enough just general exercises, your traps are going to be pretty big. Like when I deadlift and stuff, people see my traps and they realize when I bend down and do stuff. I don't do any trap exercises. It's just not necessary. You can if you want. But if you are doing very large volumes of deadlifting or pull-ups and rowing and overhead pressing and all these other things, particularly as your training loads start going up, traps are going to tend to get pretty well developed. Because every single good upper body exercise should be building your traps in the different planes and angles of it. And even the normal deadlift itself works the trap through more angles. Through more angles than the above the knee rack pull does. So this whole concept of using it to build your traps is really ridiculous. And especially like if you look at what someone like Dr. Mike Israetel said, that when we look at the stimulus versus fatigue ratio, it's terrible. He actually, I think, said it was one of the worst exercises he could even think of in terms of the amount of fatigue we generate in terms of training stimulus versus fatigue that we have to recover from. And it's something that novice lifters don't have to worry about, but this is something that we have to very, very seriously think about when you get to be an intermediate or an advanced lifter. We actually have to start looking at the amount of fatigue we're generating on all these different lifts, because if we're getting an amount of training fatigue from an exercise that isn't justified by the training response we get, we have to sometimes pull those exercises out completely, limit their volume, replace them with other things, because we have to continue to induce hypertrophy. And that's even for strength purposes. I'm not talking about bodybuilders. I'm talking about getting stronger. I'm talking about even for athletes. Right? We need to be always gaining muscle. And when you start using exercises like this that generate an enormous amount of axial loading, an enormous amount of fatigue that's hard to recover from, but with minimal hypertrophic response, you have to step back and say, okay, well, that's not a good exercise. Not a good exercise. And then we come over to the performance elements. As Jeff said, it doesn't carry over to the deadlift. Doesn't carry over to anything you do in real life. Because at what point in real life is anyone who lifts going to try to pick up something heavier than they deadlift? Because people will argue, well, a lot of times when you do a lift, it's above the knee anyways, and you pick up a heavy object. Yeah, but your deadlift will train that also. And if you're over here trying to pick up above the knee heavy objects in real life that's more than your deadlift, maybe you need to not be doing that. Maybe you need to keep working on your deadlift then. Meaning if you're a 400-pound deadlifter, you probably don't need to be grabbing a 600-pound sofa and trying to lift it by yourself. Probably not a good idea. So the point he made is that it has minimal carryover. We have that very high risk of injury. And then he pointed out, look, if you want to do some sort of partial deadlift, you can do a below-the-knee rack pull off of mats, off of blocks. Notice, and this is where I'm going to give some serious respect to Jeff on this one, at no point did he say do it in a rack. Did you guys catch that? There was never a mention of do it off low pins. He said do it off mats, do it off blocks. That's why those things exist. Some of those devices were created specifically for doing slightly higher pulls. For the Olympic lifting world, for below the knee pulls on the deadlift. That's why. That's why they exist, for that purpose. Because you really shouldn't be bouncing a heavy weight in the rack like that. Because here's the thing that we need to also remember. Even if someone said, well, couldn't I just stack blocks up and do a 800-pound above the knee rack pull when I can only deadlift 400? Well, yeah, you would damage equipment a lot less. You would damage equipment a lot less, but the injury risks that Jeff broke down are still there. You're still going to have the other training problems. Let's come over to the other big deal with it. It destroys equipment. And it destroys your joints. That's another big one. Bouncing that weight off pins, hitting pins on every rep. It destroys your joints. There's a reason strength athletes who lift big heavy weight, most of them very rarely do pin work. Anyone notice that? Stop and think about that. Go think about most of the big powerlifters you know who even do partials and strength athletes. Do you see them hitting pins? They don't bounce barbells off pins. Boards on the chest. Boards, not a steel block. Boards, wood. They pull off blocks or mats. You have blocks and stuff that are stacked up for Olympic lifters. No one uses racks for partial lifts in the real strength world. A handful of people do, but it's not popular in elite circles. You guys know why? It destroys your joints. Like if it gave you a training benefit and it destroyed barbells, they wouldn't care. They'll buy, $10,000 worth of barbells again for a serious gym. Who cares, right? If it gave results, they would just buy barbells, right? Barbells are replaceable. So what if you spend $10,000 a year on barbells if 10 people in your gym break world record? It wouldn't matter, right? Who cares? They're disposable. But they don't. They destroy your body. They destroy your joints. Sorry, guys. I got to finish this video no matter what noise is happening out there. It destroys your joints. But the thing is, hitting the barbells onto steel pins destroys the pins, destroys the rack, destroys the barbells. It bends and ruins barbells, which causes injuries downstream to everybody else in the gym, because then people are benching and squatting with bent bars. It's destructive, it's dangerous, it's reckless, it does nothing for you. It destroys equipment, injures you, and injures other people. And basically anyone promoting the above the knee rack pull, really, honestly, I would say you need to quit watching them for information. As a general, just stop watching them, guys. Because Jeff is right on this one. I've been trying to say this for years, and I think he broke it down really well. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.